Hey everybody, Roy Teeter with Performance Engineering and Manufacturing. What this video is going to be about is a quick change rear end housing for use in the circle track aftermarket racing. What we're going to go over is the basics. We're going to talk about checks and the basic maintenance that needs to be done with a quick change rear end in a car. All this will be geared towards a new user for quick change, assuming that you don't have experience with it. You came from a class that perhaps had a 9-inch or some other differential, but you moved up to a quick change. All of these tips and all these checks should be done while the quick change is in the car. You don't have to have it out on a bench like we do here. If you've gotten to the point that your quick change housing is in your car, we're going to assume that you're able to take the axles in and out by yourself. So we're going to skip that part. We will have a build series later on that's going to show you every single thing that you have to do to put a quick change together, to do maintenance, to exchange ring and pinions, and how to do all the setup. But for now, we're covering the basics. Once you get the axle out of the car, you want to set it on a roller system or a cheap set of V-blocks, and you want to roll the axle, throw an indicator on it, and anywhere somewhere between 20 thousandths and under is really what you need. 0 would be perfect. When you start getting past the 20 thousandths TIR run out, you're going to have a little bit of a vibration issue. So if you check your axle and it's acceptable, something else that you should do is take a piece of angle iron, put it on the axle, and go ahead and scribe a line from one end to the other with a scribe or a paint marker. And what this is going to do is let you pull that out, and you can have a visual check if that axle's been twisted or not. Once an axle tends to twist, it doesn't twist straight. It twists kind of in a corkscrew, so it'll set you up for vibration and failure. The next thing we're going to do is remove the rear cover, and we're going to take a look at the quick change gears themselves along with the bearings in the back cover. You'll remove the bolts to the rear cover. If it was in the car, obviously a bunch of oil would drain out onto your pan. But we're going to take a quick peek at the gears. Typically in circle track, the larger count gear is going to be on the top. Slide your gears out. And what we're going to look for is any kind of wear, pitting, or spalling along the contact line on the gears. Typically, if you look at the smaller gear first, you'll see more wear because it actually does more revolutions than the larger gear does, so it works more and it wears out first. The next thing you want to do is look at the bearings themselves. You want to dump out the oil and you want to spin them by hand. If you feel anything that's catching, if you feel anything that's causing a vibration, or if they look discolored from heat, it'd be a good time to change those. At this point, you probably want to drop your drive shaft off of your rear end differential. What you're going to want to do is you want to check the torque on the retaining bolt and washer that holds your yoke on. That should be in the 45 foot-pound range. Once you do that, we can move forward to checking the bearings and the play in the lower shaft. If you take the shaft and you twist it and you feel any clunking, any grinding, that's going to warrant a little bit more investigation. Let's go to the back. Now, this lower shaft has a bearing on either end. If you have excessive play, if you can throw an indicator on it and rotate it, and if you have, we shoot for 0 to 1,000ths run out whenever we do the manufacturing. Whenever you have some wear in the bearings, possibly a few miles, a few laps on the rear end, you're going to have a little bit of play in the bearings. If you see any kind of TIR, any kind of total indicated run out past 3,000ths, you may warrant a new lower shaft. If you're having problems with discoloration on your lower bearing, if you're having more heat you think you should, or if you're having a vibration issue, one of the first things to go bad in a quick change rear end housing is the lower shaft. Any kind of impact, it gets transmitted through that lower shaft to the drive shaft, and they can twist, break, fail. So the lower shaft and the lower shaft bearings, including the lower quick change cover bearing, is something that should be checked more often than not. The next bearing group to concern yourself with is the pinion bearing group. It's made up of 3 bearings. There's a TAV nose bearing, and there's 2 bearings that's in a opposing bearing cup, retained behind this cover with this retaining nut. You do want to grab that lock on that retaining nut to make sure that it's tight, and that should be done every time you take the gear out. If you grab the pinion and it feels like there's excessive play, you may need to see how tight your bearings are. When we set these up, it's set up between 4 thousandths to 6 thousandths backlash, and that's between the pinion and the ring gear. It's a little difficult to check without the tools. We have a tool that mounts onto it with an indicator, and we have a multiplying factor, and that's how we check and we set them up. But if it feels different than it did when you first got your housing, maybe that's something you need to look into. We're going to zoom in just a little bit. I'm going to point out a couple things while we're in here. This black aluminum ring up here, that's your actual pinion nut retainer that locks your pinion nut into place, holding your pinion bearing group in. Again, you want to make sure that cap is seated fully. You want to make sure that your locking tabs are bent down. And this retaining plate right here actually retains your lower shaft bearing. And this one, you can see that it's overlapping that bearing, doing its job. So you want to make sure all those things are in place, or else things could get a little loose and get a little interesting. The next part of the quick change housing we're going to move to for inspection is the inspection plug. We're going to go ahead and take that off. And it's going to be hard to do without actually getting down in there. What you can view is your pinion teeth themselves. And what you're going to look for, and Carson's going to overlay a picture here, you're always going to look at the root of the tooth, and you're going to look for any pitting or any wear or any discoloration from heat along that pinion tooth. That pinion works a lot harder than the ring gear does. It's going to show signs of wear, abuse, and failure before the ring gear does. So that's what we're really doing, is we're just inspecting the pinion there. The next thing we're going to want to check is our vent itself. We want to make sure that it's not clogged up with mud, or heaven forbid it's been disconnected. That vent serves a very vital purpose to this rear end. When the oil gets hot, it expands. The rear end gets hot, it expands. All that pressure has to go somewhere, and that's what the vent is for. If you don't have a good vent in your rear end housing, when the oil gets hot, it starts pushing itself past all of the seal points. It's going to push itself past the pinion seal. It's going to push itself past the hub seal. When filling the quick change rear end for the first time, it's going to take about 4 quarts of oil. We recommend a 75-140 full synthetic, or an 80W90 conventional, anything with a GL5 rating. Typically people use what they've used in the past, but what we personally recommend is our PEM brand 75-140 gear lube. So when you're ready, you already have the inspection plug off. Now you will fill through this inspection plug, and you will keep filling it until you'll have this plug out. Whenever this starts to pour out, that's your maximum capacity. If you overfill a rear end housing, you'll have a couple issues. One of them being overheating, believe it or not. Too much lube is a bad thing. And then the second thing is, with that extra heat, you will push out lube past the seal areas. Now that I've gone over all the basics of a quick change housing, you're going to have to do a little bit of reassembly. You're going to put your cover back on. Don't forget to put the lube back in the rear area for the quick change gears themselves. The gear lube from the main chamber does not lubricate the rear gears. That's a separate chamber. The other thing you have to do is reinstall your axles. When reinstalling your axles, especially in a full floater rear end, you want to use a high pressure grease. What brand? Whatever brand you're happy with. But it needs to be an EP rating, an extreme pressure rating for the grease. And you do need to apply that on both ends of the spline of the floater axle. Now with that information, get out there, put your quick changes together, and go racing.